Adam Carolla.
I mean, who doesn't want to listen to Adam Carolla say anything? I've been a fan of his for so long, and of course, I've done his show a couple of times. But to have him on Better Together, so there is something really amazing about him, and of course, he is a phenomenal. He just has the best podcast in the world, really, until Better Together came along. But
that is true.
Why we want you to listen to this episode and what is so amazing is what
his
he
story.
actually taught us about his story and the understanding that when you embrace the thing that you're best at, which by the way might be the oddest thing, the thing that nobody thinks that could make you a success, that's the thing to go after, and he will tell you how and why.
Yeah, you're not going to believe.
And you will not believe the thing that you're best at is the answer to your prayers and your success.
You're not going to believe what he was best at and how it got him where it got him. So you got to listen. It really is a fantastic story.
We're better together with Ann and Heather.
Today, everybody, welcome to Better Together with Ann and Heather. We are adding another one to our tribe today that I am very, very happy to have, Mr. Adam Carolla. However, I think you have a different name that we would like to introduce you with to our audience. Who are we having on today, Heather?
Adam Lakers Carolla.
Adam Lakers Carolla.
Which I see Heather Dodgers Duffy.
We want to know where your middle name came from, Adam.
I wish there was a good story behind it. I wish my dad was the equipment manager for the Lakers in the 70s or something like that. Oh, the 60s, sorry. I never got a middle name.
Yeah.
So I never had one at birth. And I got kind of tired of everyone else having that middle initial or having their full name or their middle name. And I was at the DMV, I don't know, probably 1986, 1987. And I just found myself filling out the paperwork, and I just stared at the blank space in the middle, or the middle name that I never had, and always kind of felt a little unloved. Felt like my parents didn't really.
Yeah, they got a little lazy with the.
Yeah, like the bloom was off the rose. Like, everyone has 5 middle names now.
Yeah.
I had 0.
Yeah.
And so I just was sort of Lakers, Celtics, the whole thing, Larry Bird. And I just looked down and I just wrote Lakers into it. And then I turned it in, and it's been on every official document ever since.
And did you tell your parents that you added a name to your heritage, or did you leave them in the dark?
No, I left them in the dark. I treat them like mushrooms.
That was back in the glory days when you could do things like that at the DMV. I just walked in there with a baptismal certificate to get a fake ID so that I could be 21. You could never get away with that kind of stuff now.
Well, we used to just lie about our weight, and now look at us.
And height.
I'm 105 on my driver's license, still from when I was 16.
It's perfect. Yeah, you're overweight on your driver's license. Adam, I have been such a fan of yours for so long, and we want to go back to a beginning. I mean, to be admitted, I've had a bit of a crush on you since Loveline. I love the way that you speak to kids and young adults, and I know that was born somewhat of from whence you come. Going back to not celebrating birthdays or having middle names, you did come into Hollywood, and we would love to begin at the beginning of that moment if we could, going to being a boxing coach. Is that what you thought that you were going to be for life?
Well, I was a carpenter for many, many years out of high school. And I like the trade, I like knowing a trade. I like, having a skill and all that kind of stuff. But I'm by nature kind of a talkative person. I like to collaborate. I like to share ideas. And the construction site was a lonely place for that. Because, when you work in SoCal, as I did in Los Angeles in construction, many of the people don't even speak English. I mean, and then many of the other folks, they do speak some English, but you don't really feel like talking to them about sketch or improv or life or love. So
here I am on a construction site.
Well, I'm starting to see why you weren't Taco Bell material.
Yeah, I found myself kind of lonely. So I thought, I'd love to get in front of people, and I always felt like sort of teaching and instructing, like I had some sort of natural capacity for that. And I always boxed. So I thought, well, maybe there's this whole new wave of what they call like white collar boxing or executive boxing, where like you're teaching executives and lawyers and things like that how to box. And I thought this might be a fun job.
Going from construction workers to executives.
Yeah, and I could talk to them, and I could hear how they became successful, and so on and so forth. You didn't need a pickup truck for it, and all that. So I sort of made my way into teaching boxing at like a boxing club.
Yeah.
Like it was called Bodies in Motion. I think there's still a few
I
around.
remember those.
And, yeah, and I liked it. And I was pretty good at it. And I felt like, oh, this is something I would do anyway. Now I'm getting paid, $20 a class, but I'm getting paid to do it. And so I was sort of half in the carpentry world and half in the boxing coach world. So, and I was listening to the radio, and I was listening to K-Rock, and they were talking about having a boxing match, kind of a morning stunt zoo kind of move. And Michael, the maintenance man, was going to fight Jimmy, the sports guy. And I was like, ooh, I've always been interested in radio, and I've always thought about it, always listened to it. And then maybe I could teach one of them to box, because they said we needed instructors and equipment and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, if I could get in there, I could see the inside of the station, maybe the studio, maybe meet Kevin and Bean,
Yeah,
so I was like, oh, and I called the radio station, and I got the answering machine. I had about as much luck getting into the radio station as you'd imagine calling a radio station would be, right? And I just never got anywhere, but I kept hearing about them. And eventually I just went down to the radio station, and I just, got into the building. It was like a commercial building. And then I went up to K-Rock, which was on the 9th floor. And I got out of the elevator and went to the K-Rock suite, and K-Rock was closed. K-Rock didn't open until 9 a.m. They always do that thing where you win like your beer koozie or your party package or tickets for in excess, and they go, come between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. business hours, whatever. Because
and let me just insert here, because I grew up in LA, and K-Rock was that was the station. That was what everybody listened to. It was huge.
Yeah, and I grew up listening to it too, because I'm from LA. So I got there. Now it's like 7:15, 7:30 in the morning, and the doors are locked to K-Rock, and they're not going to open until 9. So now I found myself kind of standing by the elevator, trying to figure out, like, do I go and maybe I'll come back in a couple hours, or what do I do? And as I was sitting there kind of thinking about it, somebody exited the elevator, and they started walking around the back where you could get in. And I kind of followed the person as they were walking to the back key card door. And I said, like, oh, are you going into K-Rock? And the guy was like, yeah. And I didn't want to be presumptuous and like follow him in. It's that kind of weird thing, like,
like
someone
a
who lives
stalker.
Yeah, like, someone who lives in a security building, and you're trying to ring the buzzer and someone else is walking in. You feel kind of weird, like going, oh, hold the door. I'm just going to slide in,
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, I'm going in or something. And I said, just tell him there's a boxing coach out here, and I'll just wait. So thanks. And he just went in, and then I just sat by the elevator for 20 minutes or something. I didn't know what was going on, or if anyone would come out, or what the deal was. But at some point, Jimmy, the sports guy, who's Jimmy Kimmel now, just walked down the hall, and he just kind of, in between commercial breaks or something. And he was like, are you the boxing guy? And I was like, yep, I am. And he said, okay. And I said, you want me to teach you how to box? And he went, sure. And I said, okay, when do you want to do it? And he said, how about today? And I said, oh, okay. When can you meet me in Pasadena at Bodies in Motion? And he's like, I think I'd be there at noon. So I was like, all right, here's the parking structure. Like, I'll just be waiting in the parking lot.
Right.
and that was it.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously that
Wow.
is a story that led to your entire career. You and Jimmy Kimmel have been rumored to be the best of friends. Did that merge and that bond happen immediately that you knew this would become a mentor and vice versa?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
did.
It was pretty love at first sight,
Yeah.
and I knew I needed to like hitch my wagon to his team.
Wow. And did you think that it was going to be through sports, or in your heart when you were saying that you want to get in front of people, or you knew that was it comedy that you knew? Was it storytelling? What was it inside you that thought you had a voice that was going to be that needed to be seen and heard?
Yeah, I never needed to be seen, but I needed
Sorry,
to be heard.
excuse me. I like seeing you, but heard. Yes, heard.
I was always like, I really don't want to be seen, but I would like to be heard. So that's why I was kind of attracted to radio.
Right.
And so I knew that Jimmy could help at least teach me about radio or show me the inside of the studio or introduce me to Kevin and Bean. Or he wasn't very high up the totem pole though,
Right.
over there.
Right.
Jimmy wasn't really in a position where he could call shots. Like he couldn't say, I know this guy, he's funny, let him get on the air, let him do some comedy or something. But he could kind of suggest things and help facilitate things. But it was kind of a balancing act because Kevin and Bean were kind of particular and like a little finicky. And you couldn't just kind of bum rush them and go, here's what we're doing. You had to kind of help facilitate, but also sort of make it seem like it was their idea. And, he just said to me, what do you do?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I just kind of riff and I speak my mind and I improvise and I go off the cuff. And he said, well, that's what Kevin and Bean do. So we don't need you for that.
Yeah. You're right.
I said, okay. And he said, what you have to do if you want to get on the air, you have to come up with a character. And I said, I don't really do characters. I've done enough sketch and improv and that kind of stuff to kind of know the people that did all the accents and all the dialects and all the characters. And then there was kind of me.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a personality, but I really would have trouble with voices or, characters. And he was like, well, that's the deal. So you come up with a character.
Or you don't get on air.
Or you don't get on the air.
So what'd you do?
And-
Oh, he came up with a character.
I mean, I know, but tell us.
My version of it is he said, you're going to call in Monday. They're probably not going to love it because I know them. And it'll probably be one and done because if they don't love it, it's going to be hard to get you back
Right.
to do this character again. Because we've all been in that position. Like you go, you want that person to come back on the show and you go,
right.
I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
Whatever. He said, it'll probably be that. Now, when I talked to him more recently, he's like, I wasn't that negative. But he was like, he was managing my expectations.
Right,
I'll just
sure.
put it to you that
yeah.
way.
But then again, this was the biggest radio show in town. It was a huge radio show. So that was a big deal.
So he didn't want your expectations to be so high, like he was saying, dude, I got you the job. But I mean, drum roll, you call in and you are.
I do Mr. Burcham, the woodshop teacher,
right.
is the character. And it's good enough, like the first time around, where it was like kind of interesting and they got some laughs out of it and it was kind of fun. And, they were kind of probably a little agnostic on it, but it was good enough. And so it was like, then I would secretly talk to Jimmy. Now, Jimmy wasn't going to tell him that I was the boxing coach because they would have went, I don't want some part-time comedian boxing coach guy thinks he's funny calling in. So he knew that if I got saddled with the title of boxing coach, it would hurt hurt my chances.
Sure,
you know? So,
sure.
you know, of course, he was reporting back to me like, yeah, I think they thought it was pretty good. And, you know, he was my advocate, you know, so he was like,
so
well, maybe
nice.
he can call in next week. And they're like, yeah, okay, so what? So be it, you know. And then
So they kind of
called
let it
in.
roll out. You got to say, you got a second. You tantalized him enough that you know the school, your character got to come back. Do you remember any of the jokes that you said? Do you remember how you laid him out?
And you would probably appreciate this. I approached it.
Yes.
I fell back on my groundlings training.
Okay.
And my Acme improv training.
Yes.
When I was trying to come up with the character. So I was like, well, you know, I had ideas like, oh, I'm the gay florist who reviews
Yes.
movies and stuff like that. But I was like, I don't know anything about that business. I can't really do that dialect or that affect. Like, I was just like, so my first thought when I kind of fell back on my training, I was like, what do you know? What
Yes.
do you know? And I was like, well, I know carpentry.
Yes.
That much I know. And okay, so I know all the woodworking and all the tools and all the specific information of working with wood. And then I thought, well, what's a character that really kind of hasn't been done, you know? I always thought my wood shop teachers and my shop teachers, like in junior high, were really funny because they were so mean.
They were mean and droll. They did have a very interesting way of dealing with kids. Like, you better believe it, you're going to get your hand sliced off.
I don't know
Like,
what
there was always a danger in woodshop.
Yes.
Who had woodshop class?
No, but I mean, and that's something that should be done. About that and home economics. But don't get me started on education. People should know how to sew, and they should know how to make a good cutting board. Come on. Who's with me on the cutting board front?
I'm with you, man.
That's what I'm saying.
Woman.
Okay, so woman.
I was like, all right, well, you better do something you kind of know. And
Yeah.
I kind of knew, and I always thought it was funny that the shop teachers were so mean and hated the kids and danger and everything else. And then I also thought, well, that's never been done before. So I've
Yes.
never seen an SNL skit about a shop teacher.
No.
So I like that. And then I really got deep into my training, which is like, well, what's the motivation?
Yeah.
Why is this shop teacher, who's this guy in his 50s, he taught at Louis Pasteur Middle School in Monrovia, which doesn't exist.
Not that you dove deep, but yeah.
I was like, why is this person calling Kevin and Bean
Right.
at 7:20 in the morning?
Yep, right.
What is his motivation?
I love that you
He
went
doesn't-
after logic.
Yeah, he doesn't like the music they play.
That's
You know,
correct.
this guy would not listen to that music. He doesn't like all the cool K-rock stuff. That's for the kids in Orange County. You know?
Yes.
So what's his thing? So I came up with this device. Everyone back then had a clock alarm radio.
Yes.
And my kids, my junior high age kids, would all have it set to K-rock. So I knew at 7:20 in the morning, they were all listening to K-rock.
Yes.
And I needed to use the radio as an intercom to
God.
speak to my kids.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
God darn it.
I
That's
woke up to
amazing.
K-Rock now that you mention it.
Wow.
And my thing was, I'd always started by saying I'd injured myself in the garage over the weekend and I wasn't coming in. And so, but, you know, Mr. Saponzi, that Quimby with the sweater vest, he's going to be subbing for me. Now listen. And then I would start telling him, like, he's going to put on a movie. He's going to put on Blood on the Bandsaw. You're going to watch the movie. Then you put your heads on the desk. I don't want any grab ass. I don't want any moving around. Stay away from my drill index. I don't want to see one drill bit missing from my index. And you stay away from my Miss Makita poster. I don't want you even looking at that thing. And I would just get into all this, and I would just yell at the kids through the radio.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
But I always had, like the shop teachers, I always had the one special kid that I
Yes,
liked.
yes.
You know, there's always the teacher's pet in there
Yes.
who could do no wrong,
Ding,
you know.
ding.
And
Guess who
then I
that
would get
was, folks? Guess who that was in my day?
Oh, was that you?
Yes, it was. Anyways,
guess
go
who
ahead.
it wasn't?
I had a kid named Brad Higginstaller who
Oh, good name.
was my special kid.
Yes.
And he was the only one allowed to work with tools
Yes.
while I was gone.
Right.
You know, he's the only one I trusted. And then I would get into this whole thing about, Brad, listen, I know you're building that cigar box for your grandfather. I was thinking about it, over the weekend. We're talking about doing a dovetail joint or a finger joint or a dado or a rabbit joint, but I think we're going to do a butt joint. So go ahead. Take the skill saw, take the contractor saw with the Biesenmeyer fence and set up, get the 60-tooth carbide blade on there and do all your rips on that. Then you do your cross cut on a slide compound miter saw. And I would start getting all this like crazy technical shit with him. And then when then it'd be over. And nobody knew who I was or what I knew, and they would go like, this guy's a comedian, seems like a comedian, but how's he know all this stuff about woodworking and stuff, And then the character just kind of caught fire after that.
So the character built, and the curiosity of the character. And first of all, I have to say I have such appreciation, and it's curious how you went into doing radio. I know you don't want to be seen, so maybe that answers my own question as to why you didn't be an actor. Because I have to tell you, not only is that probably the best description of what it would be to be an actor, and I don't get that from many actors I work with, any kind of that kind of specificity. Because developing an understanding of something that is going to make people curious may be the most difficult thing that there is in performance. To create that, who the fuck, what is that? Not to mention, I want to hear it tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. And that is something that you have done. I've been in this industry a long time, so I say it's no big deal to say that you have been a voice of America, one of the leading voices and the most downloaded podcaster in America, in the world, actually, is the truth. And going from beginning this character of curiosity and humor was the leap off. And I know that then you were asked to join the Kevin and Bean show. How did that transition happen, if you don't mind? Because I am curious as hell and loving this story to where it went from there. And of course, we want to go on to Loveline and how you changed many, many, many young people's lives. But how did it go into Kevin and Bean? And did you get offered a position, a formal position?
Well, the character became really popular, but I wasn't being paid.
Got it.
Of course. And it just sort of morphed into, at some point, it seemed like, well, let's get him into the studio. And let's do Ask Mr. Burcham, where I would take phone calls and do home improvement questions, because I knew I could do it because I understood the business of renovation and remods and home, improvement and everything. So I was like, I can handle this. And at some point, they started paying me $50 a bit. And I was just kind of doing piecemeal stuff. And I would go in and maybe do 4 bits a week and, get $200 and so on and so forth. But the character sort of kept taking on a little bit of a life of its own. And eventually they gave me a Saturday morning spot where, even though it was K-Rock, I was doing home improvement questions from like 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Saturday mornings or something like that.
Wow.
I don't think they really knew what was going on either. They just thought, oh, this guy's so funny and the character's so popular, we should franchise it a little bit. And I was just happy to do anything. I didn't know how to do a radio show or do any of that, but I was like, I can talk. So we did that for a little bit. And then I started to get in with the morning show and, go out to breakfast with Jimmy and Kevin and Bean and Frank Murphy, the producer, and stuff. I started to kind of ingratiate myself into that group.
You started to follow them through the door. Like, oops, yes. I'm in here.
And, Jimmy and I would always be talking about ideas, the shows we wanted to do, or, bits we could get on to Kevin and Bean, or more just, he was a fountain of creativity. He was 26 when I met him. It was a ball of energy. He just wanted to do more and create more and make more. And, it was sort of everything was sort of aspirational. Like, we're going to blow this taco stand one day and we're going to start doing our own thing together. But it kind of felt like a pipe dream.
Who knew?
What had happened was Loveline was always on K-Rock. It was always Sunday nights.
Yes.
At some point, they went to 5 days a week.
Yes.
and they were going to syndicate. They were going to take Loveline and push it out to the rest of the country. And the powers that be thought, well, maybe there should be some more comedy in it. Maybe somebody who has a little better sense of humor rather than just like a straight host should be involved. So they said to Dr. Drew, hey, is there anyone you think is funny, you want to work with? And Dr. Drew, he doesn't run in that world. He doesn't know comics or actors or comedic actors. He didn't know anybody.
Of course.
So he just said, I don't know who he is, but I listen to a show Saturday mornings when I'm doing the rounds at the hospital or whatever. He listened, and he was like, I think this guy's really funny, so cool. But I don't know who he is or how. Is he old? Is he a carpenter? But I think the guy's funny. So that's what I got. So
this is amazing.
Program director, Kevin, he called me into his office and I'll never forget it. He said, we know Mr. Burcham is funny, but we don't know if you're funny.
Oh my God.
Which is a perfect radio conversation to have, right?
So funny.
So I said, well, I am funny. And he said, but I'm thinking about you co-hosting Loveline as Mr. Burcham.
Oh.
And I'm like, I just don't see 2 hours a night of Mr. Burcham on Loveline. I don't think that could possibly work, but I am funny and I could do it. And Kevin Weatherly, he just went, all right, well, take a chance on it. We'll give it a try.
And the rest is history.
14, 15 months after I was teaching boxing and on a construction site and stuff, I was doing a syndicated radio show.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, we all know that's a kind of miracle story, but when you talk about it, I do want to talk about where you were. I mean, the way you were raised, because I think it propelled you into the way that you became the voice that you are. When people come to you or say, Adam, how could I possibly be on the radio or do, because your story is so unique. And obviously, one of a kind because of who you are. But what do you tell to kids who are trying to get into a new place in their lives or trying to move forward like you did up and out of a painful situation and become who they want to become?
Well, I always tell them you have to show up. You have to get to that place. Like you have to. I had to get into the radio station,
yes.
And I used the part of the story you don't know, but that people should digest is I was a carpenter, and when I said to the guy who owned the boxing club, how about you give me a shot to be a boxing instructor, he just said no. Said, why not? I think I would be a really good boxing instructor. And he's like, we hire ex-champions, and you're not an ex-champion, and we need to sell you as a legitimate ex-champion to get people to want to take your class, and you're not. So, whether you can teach boxing or not, sort of irrelevant, but no. And I said, okay. And then I noticed that at the boxing club, he had some of those speed bag stations, the
yes.
things with the big round piece and the brackets and everything, and they were sitting on the floor. And I said, I bet you'd probably want someone to hang those speed bag stations, and I can see you got some heavy bags laying on the ground over there and stuff. It seems like you need somebody around here to put that stuff up. You need a carpenter. And he's like, all of a sudden his ears perked up. He was like, yeah, keep talking. And I was like, well, good news. I'm a journeyman carpenter.
Wow. And
he's like, yeah. And I'll tell you what, I'll hang those bags. I'll hang those speed bag holders. I can do that stuff. And all I want is a chance. So I'm going to work in this gym for you as a carpenter. I will charge you flat rate, $10 an hour. That's nothing. And I'll do a good job for you. And then you just need to let me try to be a boxing coach here. And that's all. And if I can't do it, I can't do it. And he said, okay, fine. hang the speed bags. And
Wow.
and that's where it started.
I think that's one of the coolest things to say. Find the thing that you're good at. I mean, we say, but everybody has their own excellent self. It's our birthright to be born into it. You have it. You have all of the other things and the talent at your fingertips. But sometimes the way in the door is to the special thing that you know that's all your own and nobody else knows it. And it becomes the key to the door that opens all of the other ones that come in front of you. And that's also acknowledging and, as you say, showing up is showing up for the things you're skilled at, showing up when you're in school, looking at the things that people do that you don't know how to do. And I think that people think that sometimes you go along or, oh, Adam Carolla got really lucky. You know, he was discovered on the Jimmy Kimmel show, or Ann, wow, she was discovered and then she went in and she did a soap opera. The thing is, the skills that you have along the way, you never are okay to stop learning, because the responsibility of a learned person is that they have the ability to walk in and be a journeyman of certain things. You know things. Things don't just come to you because you think, hey, you know what, I really deserve to be an improv artist, so I should be able to have my own TV show. That's not the way that it works. You got to work your life, the things that you care about, the things that you hone, and where it is and what the skills are. Now, obviously, you were not a journeyman when you went on to Loveline. So when you approached that as a newbie in terms of a talk show host, what was the experience of becoming something that you had never been before?
Well, you know, interviewing was a definite skill that I didn't possess. It's something that's kind of invisible. You really only get it from reps, you know.
Yes.
I didn't know how to interview people.
Right.
I wasn't a good listener. I was lacking a lot of essential skills that someone in my position needed. I was funny enough to kind of make up for it. And, you know, funny kind of heals all wounds. You know, you can kind of get away with a lot of other kind of deficits in your ability if you're really funny with it.
Right.
And then at a certain point, you know, a year goes by and you've interviewed people and you're starting to get a skill set down and you're starting to get your 10,000 hours in and your repetitions in. And, you know, all these years later, I really feel like now I'm actually becoming a much better interviewer than I was, you know, even 10 years ago.
Before we run out of time,
oh my goodness,
we're getting close.
Oh my goodness,
I want to touch.
We haven't
I
even
want to
gotten
touch
to Act
quickly
2.
on the Man Show, because that is. I feel like
Yes.
that's an era gone by. I would love it if we. I mean, that show was so fantastic. I can't imagine what it would be today.
It would be canceled today.
I know, but I think we need it. And then before you go, we do want to talk about your new show on the Daily Wire. So
has it already been 40 minutes?
Yeah,
I mean, Adam, I just enjoyed talking to you, man. I really love hearing your
what do you
story.
think
Let's get to
the
Man Show.
quickly.
Yes.
Like that, for people, if they don't remember that show, it was like a just celebration of, I mean, I guess male chauvinism, but in the funniest way. Right? I mean, how would you describe that show, and what do you think it would look like today?
And was it the antidote to Loveline, or how did that get born?
Jimmy and I want to do a show together, and we want to do a show where we kind of said what we wanted to say and had our own sensibilities and so on and so forth. And Jimmy, at this point in his career, he was starting to go out on some auditions and hosting auditions, and he was coming home, or maybe he came home, because I don't think he had a cell phone at the time, but he came home from some audition, and the audition was for him to host some sort of daytime syndicated, got the guy, got the gal, they're going to talk news and current events or something. And he said to me, I go, well, how'd that audition go? And he goes, not well. And then I said, well, what's the problem? What happened? And he said, well, they said I needed to be likable to women. And then he paused and he went, my wife doesn't even like me. And I said, okay. And he said, you know, we should do our own show. And I said, all right. And he goes, it should just be the Man Show. Like, we don't need to be likable to women. We'll just do our own show. We'll call it the Man Show, and we'll just hire all the people we want to work with, and we'll just do our own thing. And I was like, all right. I mean, that sounds good, but I don't know how that's ever, who's going to let us do our own show? And at some point, I don't know, the LA Times or something was doing some feature on me, and the reporter was a huge fan of Mr. Burcham, and his editor was not a big fan of mine. And, he kept coming back to me for interviews, and he kept going, my editor kind of wants more. Like, he wants to know what you're doing, other than Burcham or Loveline. And I was like, well, I'm working on this show called The Man Show. It's going to be a big hit. It's me and they didn't know who Jimmy Kimmel was, I don't think. And it's our own thing, whatever. I was just like kind of padding the resume.
Right. Yeah.
And because we weren't doing anything with it. We weren't pitching it. Nobody wanted it, whatever. And then, of course, Jimmy saw the article and he was pissed. He was like, why are you talking about The Man Show? Someone's going to steal our idea. And I was like, I don't know. He kept asking me what more. I was kind of lying, And Michael Davies, who was a executive now, and it was an executive, a secretary at ABC, like gave him the article or something. And he was reading it. It's like, oh, The Man Show. That sounds like an interesting idea. So he called us into the office, and the next thing you know, we're doing a pilot on ABC.
God. That is fantastic.
I need to get on your luck ride. I feel like I need to hitch. You know how you wanted to hitch onto the group over there at the Kevin and Bean show? I'm going to hitch right onto you, Carolla. Your trajectory is beautiful, and also your what you speak to kids. When you were growing up, I know it was hard. I need to know this. When you went on to Loveline, how did you develop, and did you develop a set of boundaries, or how did you learn how to speak? And yes, you talked about interviewing, but speak so directly and positively to kids. Did you have boundaries that you set? Did you know how far you could push them? Because you did. You made people think normally or logically, or at least without the judgment that they had through any of the situations that they were dealing with, let alone the sexual reality that they were living in, from STDs to everything else that you guys just put in front of everyone and said, let's talk about this. Did you develop that with Dr. Drew? Because that certainly is a philosophy on life. You're starting a new show that is even deeper into the truth. And I guess I want to get to what your truthful philosophy is about yourself and life and how you've been able to share it.
I just went in thinking, I like psychology. I like comedy. I like the human condition. I study it. My dad's a therapist later in life. And I come from a group of people that are sort of counselors and like kind of therapists and stuff like that. Not successful, but that's kind of the family trade. So
there's your dark childhood.
I had some interest in that. And I just thought, I'm just going to listen and then just be honest, and I'll just trust my instincts. I'm not going to second guess myself or the advice I give. I have Dr. Drew here as kind of a, as sort of training wheels. He's not going to let me get too far into the weeds with some of this stuff.
Right.
I'll just be sort of neutral and honest, and I'll listen to everybody, and I'll just instinctively tell them what I'm feeling.
Of course, something you've continued for the incredible amount of your career and going and building into your next moment, which Heather, why don't we talk about?
No, I'd like to hear from you. I think, what are you doing with the Daily Wire?
The Daily Wire.
I'm doing a series of 6 stand-up specials. Rob Riggle and Jay Leno are on the first 2. I'm doing another one with TJ Miller and Patrick Warburton, and I think Shatner's going to join me for one as well.
Do you have any girls on the roster? Do you have any girls on the roster?
Oh yeah, we're always looking, Anne. So I'll actually throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I mean, you just taught me a great big lesson. I'm still, I may not be a kid, but I still know that I always ask for permission to put my ring in the hat.
Anne did stand up for a bit. We went downtown and she got up there.
I'm not that unfunny. I could also be a heckler in the audience.
Well, we do stand up, we do an interview, we do improv. It's kind of a hybrid show, but hour-long sort of stand-up specials that are a little bit different than what you might see formatically on Netflix or HBO or something like that. And the Daily Wire is just the place that wanted to do business. HBO and Netflix, I don't think they're fans of mine. Maybe I say things that they disagree with sometimes, and we're just living in that new world order. So I just went somewhere that wanted to hear what I had to say, and that was the Daily Wire.
I might just show up at your studio and wait till you come out of the elevator, even though you don't have an elevator in your studio. But listen, we want to thank. I know our audience is so happy that we've been able to talk to you, Adam. It feels like I was honored to be interviewed by you, and feels like our conversation continues as people who just enjoy speaking the truth, telling it like it is, and also continuing to encourage that into others. Thank you, Adam Carolla.
Thanks, Ann and Heather. Appreciate it.
We're better together with Ann and Heather.
You know what I was afraid to tell? Wait, I gotta say something. You know how I said I grew up in LA in the 80s and all of this?
Yes. Is it about the radio station? What?
I remembered crank calling Loveline.
Oh my God.
We would crank call Loveline with like fake problems.
Are you kidding?
But here's the problem.
If people did that. I always wondered because I love that show so much.
I can't remember if we got on. I can't remember what our story was.
God.
But
I want to know what Heather made up.
Vague recollection of crank calling Loveline that I was thinking about towards the end of the interview, and I thought, like, I'm not going to bring this up.
I have the exact opposite of that. That's hilarious that you did that, but I kind of had the opposite because I'm going to call on a different level. I think he's so cute. I want to date him. I don't know.
I know you do.
I said that when we drove to the radio station.
Because Ann was on his podcast, by the way.
Yes. And that's a fun interview too. By the way, he's taught me a lot. And I think one of the things that he says, he went into his world having no idea. And that's why when we say like go after, now we can say it's woodshop, but to go after, who knew that would be the key
too. It was boxing
that he trained, right? And then his character became a woodshop character. The connecting of the dots of our lives is really interesting. And what I love that he basically says is when you tune into that thing, it just will surprise you that becomes the path. And on Better Together, we really want to encourage the thinking about yourself, being truthful about what it is that you like, embracing that, and then letting that lead rather than what somebody else thinks about you or thinking, oh, I got to do it this way. He broke down every door. He waited in waiting
do
rooms.
What you're good at and see where it takes you.
And have the guts.
Yeah.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Anyway, man, that was fun.
That was fun. Man show, that was fun.
And a big thanks to our Better Together team, Ryan Tillotson, Silvana Alcala, Daniel Ferreira, and of course, Ann and Heather. If you haven't already, please subscribe on whatever device or platform you're listening to this on. And as always, see you next week.